It's a good morning to you all. Welcome to Massacre Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele and this is the Breakfast Club. For many years, the people of Matabeleland have lived with the pain of Gukurahundi. And for the past few years, many people were not even able to talk about it. It is recently that some people have opened up and they are now sharing their stories. In the past year or so, I've talked to hundreds of victims and survivors of Gukurahundi. They all have painful stories. And when they narrate these stories, it's like it happened yesterday. They still have the pain. They still feel the pain. They need to talk. They just want to open up and have someone who listens to them. And in most cases, they're not looking for another Gukurahundi. They're not looking for revenge. They just want simple things. They need to get death certificates for their relatives that died. They need birth certificates for the kids that survived. They need pensions for those who were killed and never received their pensions. They want to rebury their relatives that are in shallow graves. And many times I ask myself, is this too much to ask? Can the government of Zimbabwe just grant these people their wishes? Can they allow them to bury their relatives that are in mass graves? What is the problem? What would happen if all of a sudden people were allowed to bury their relatives? What would change if people were given death and birth certificates for their relatives? I think the people of Matebeleland have gone through a lot. They've given this government enough time to actually think and decide what it has to do. But I find that most of the times when it comes to Gukurahundi, the government of Zimbabwe is very rigid. They don't want to meet the people of Matebeleland halfway.
To talk about the Matebeleland question, a continuing atrocity and the limitations of the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, the limitations, the challenges, NPRC. I was also asked to talk about the bitter truths of state involvement in healing. And I was asked to talk about victims and perpetrators. And talk about alternatives for accountability. I want to share a small little story. I have been working on the issue of Gukurahundi from the time I was a small child. I have continued to work on Gukurahundi as a young man. I cannot think of anything that has occupied me in my entire life like the subject of Gukurahundi. I consider myself a victim of Gukurahundi. But I have chosen to do something about it. In the early 90s, I had the privilege of working with a very courageous group of people. I was very young. I was still studying law at the University of Zimbabwe. Of course, I had come from a political family. My own father was a victim of Gukurahundi. I have often told this story to a few people. When he was released from jail, where he had been tried for treason and acquitted, on allegations that he was aiding and supporting dissidents. The case did not succeed and it collapsed. Because the chief key witness was his compatriot and friend in Zapu, who had been forced to confess that my father was indeed in the Zipra War Council, Zapu War Council. And of course, when the trial started, the trial happened on a Sunday because they said it was too dangerous to have it on any other day. Mind you, the entire command of Zapu was all in prison or in hiding. And of course, my father here, Paul Tembanyati, can testify. We were left alone. My father was in jail. We had no school fees. Every time I was sent home because I didn't have school fees. And I would stay at home for 2 weeks until the headmaster called me to say, come back to school. I discovered later he was actually paying my fees. Anyway, that's a different story. So what I remember very vividly is that after coming out of jail, my grandfather died almost a week after he came out. And I remember that my father wanted to go to bury his father, but he was warned that if he went, things might not go well for him. So instead he sent my older brother, who went to represent him in burying my father. So they went for 4 days. And we didn't know where they were. Because there was no WhatsApp those days. There was no cell phones. I cannot forget sitting at home with my father and my young brother for 4 days waiting for my older brother to come back after burying my grandfather. Mind you, Jinin Tuta had been killed in very mysterious circumstances. So Gukurahundi affected everyone. It has come to define Matabeleland. So when someone asks, what is the Matabeleland question? There was never a Matabeleland question. Matabeleland was like any other place in this country. That is why our former president went to Mpandeni. He taught at Hope Fountain. This was the place to go. This was the most cosmopolitan place in the country. The most prominent business persons were Shona origin. The Nyashanus, the Zirunis. There were so many of them. Matabeleland was not a place for Ndebeles. It was a place for everyone. Gukurahundi changed a lot of things. Gukurahundi created a sense that Matabeleland was a place for Ndebeles. And that Ndebeles were targeted for being Ndebele. We can argue. I have written about this many times. But there are many arguments to the whole concept and the whole issue of Gukurahundi.
Kuningi izinto ongaziletha nxa ufuna ukuxoxa ngendaba yeGukurahundi.
I know some people do not agree.
Ngiyazi ukuthi abanye abantu abavumelani lami.
I do not believe
Angikholwa
that the intention
ukuthi injongo
of the few people in ZANU at the top
abalutshwane kuzana abaphezulu
was to eliminate Ndebeles.
ukuthi babe ehlose ukususa amaNdebele.
That's just my opinion.
Ngumbono wami lo.
We can agree and disagree.
Singavumelana singavumelani.
I believe Gukurahundi was a political agenda.
Ngikholwa ukuthi iGukurahundi kwakuyindaba yepolitics.
It was designed to destroy ZAPU.
Yayilungiselwe ukudiliza iZAPU.
It so happened that ZAPU had its political base in Matebeleland.
Kwasokuqondana nje ukuthi iZAPU lapho yayigxile khona kwakuseMandebeleni.
So in wiping out ZAPU, ZAPU supporters became the target.
Ukuthi basuse iZAPU laba abasekeli beZAPU yiba abasuka baqonda.
So the outcome of Gukurahundi was genocidal.
Impumela yeGukurahundi yaba ukubhidliza kwabantu.
Maybe not the intention.
Mhlawumbe kungasiyo njongo.
But of course we can never say because we were not in that room where this thing was planned.
Kodwa ngezake sazi ngoba sasingekho mhla beyiplana le Gukurahundi.
It is very possible that somebody said let's get rid of these Ndebeles. We don't know.
Ukuthi ukhona wathi asibasuseni laba bantu.
There are many things that compel me to believe
Zinengi izinto ezingiphoqelela ukuthi ngikholwe
that it was a political conspiracy.
ukuthi kwakuyindaba yepolitics.
There were Ndebeles inside the top of ZANU
Ayikhona amaNdebele kuZANU PF bona laba phezulu.
who plotted this Gukurahundi,
Ababe ingxenye abantu abaplana.
who were at the forefront of it.
Ababehamba phambili.
Innocent Nkala.
Inos Nkala ngisibonela.
I say Inos because he's dead. I don't want to mention others because they're still alive. Also because these are my fathers. Understand my conflict. I'm conflicted. Because these are my fathers. Some of them who have changed, who are no longer what they were. Even me, their son is afraid of them. So, but let me tell you what has happened. A few people intending to destroy the only meaningful political opposition at the time went so far ahead to plan to massacre thousands of people. This is, for me, the most painful part. It is what they have left behind. I used to work as a lawyer in the tribunal for crimes against humanity in East Timor. And I will tell you something that you might not like to hear again. I used to defend those militia commanders who were doing the massacres. I defended many of them in court. Very bad people, horrible people, but I defended them because it was important that justice must be seen to be done. And I do not believe in mob justice. I defended a man who killed 200 people in 30 minutes. Of course, he was found guilty. Because he was guilty. But I defended him. I put everything into defending him. I defended a man who killed 10 priests and nuns. He too He too was very guilty.
laye futhi wayelecala
And he was found guilty, but I defended him.
wayelecala kodwa ngammela
I defended him with all my ability.
ngammela ngakho konke engikwenelisayo.
But the important thing is that he went through a process.
Okuqhakathekileyo ukuthi waba lethuba lokuthi angene kulolu hlelo.
Witnesses came forward.
Abafakazi beza phambili
They testified.
bafakaza.
He also had a chance to speak for himself.
Naye wathola ithuba lokuthi azikhulumele.
And eventually he was found guilty.
Ekugcineni kwakho konke wagwetshwa.
He was then sentenced to 35 years in jail.
Wagwetshwa iminyaka engu-35.
He was very happy
Wajabula
because, of course, there was no death penalty there also.
ngoba kwakungela sigwebo sokubulala sokulengisa.
I have always said,
Njalo ukuthi
I'm also available to defend anyone here in Zimbabwe.
ngikhona ukuthi ngingadifenda lowo ngubani lapha eZimbabwe.
I can do it
Ngingakwenza lokho
because everyone is entitled to that.
ngoba wonke umuntu ulelungelo lokuthi akuthole lokho.
Fortunately, in Zimbabwe, no one is asking for anyone to be tried.
Manje
Fortunately,
eZimbabwe ukuthi kulwa ofisa ukuthi kube khona umuntu othonisiswayo.
it's not a bad thing that no one is asking for no one to be tried.
So embi ukuthi akula umuntu othi akube khona othonisiswayo.
Because there are many ways of achieving justice.
Ngoba ziningi izindlela zokuthi ijustice itholakala.
Prosecuting is one.
Ukubophisa ngokunye kwakhona.
A truth process is another.
Ukukhuluma eqiniso ngokunye kwakhona.
Apologizing and being forgiven is another process.
Ukuxolisa lokuxolelwa ngokunye kwakhona.
We also know that even in our own culture we have our own ways.
Siyazi futhi ukuthi even emasikweni ethu silendlela zethu.
Sometimes people don't understand them.
Abanye abantu kwesikhathi abazizwisisi lezi zinto.
When people come, they say, no, the family will sort it out, don't worry.
Nxa abantu bengabuya bathi hayi yekela nini imuli iza ukhangela lokho.
And people from outside, they say, what? This is not a family issue.
Abantu abavela phandle bathi lokho asikho kwemuli lokho.
No, we're all interested. People say, no, let the family sort it out.
Siyafuna ukuba ingxenye yalokho.
Why am I saying this?
Why ngisitsho lokho?
I'm saying that there are so many possibilities.
Ngitsho ukuthi ziningi indlela.
But the truth of the matter is that
Kodwa iqiniso ukuthi
the perpetrators must step forward.
ukuthi labo abahlukumeza abanye kumele beze phambili.
What have they left us now?
Basishiyeleni kathesi.
A few people in ZANU-PF in 1980, 81, 82
Abantu abalutshwana nje ku ZANU-PF ngama 1980, 81, 82
under the leadership of the former president made a decision.
bekhokhelelwa ngumongameli owayekhona.
Let us finish ZAPU.
Asiyibhuqe nini zabo.
ZAPU must not exist.
Akumelanga ibe
We
khona.
want a one-party state.
Sifuna iphathi eyodwa elizweni.
And as long as we don't finish these people, they will continue to get their 20 seats.
Nxa singababhuqi bazabe lokhu bethola ama-seats abo lawa ngu-20.
Because no matter how many people we kill at election time, these Ndebeles go and vote for this ZAPU.
Ngaze sibulala abangaki abantu bayaqhubeka belokhu bevotela izabo.
But what did they leave behind?
Kodwa kuyini abakuchiya ngemuva?
A horrible legacy.
Bachiya
A horrible legacy
embi
of ethnic hatred.
inzondano phakathi kwama-tribes.
I do not begrudge any Shona person in this country.
Alikho ishona elilodwa engilizondayo.
For the simple reason that
Okwesizathu nje siyi-one.
we know the people who came and committed those atrocities.
Siyabazi abantu ababuya babulala abantu lapha.
Those people are known.
Laba abantu bayazakala.
You cannot say each and every Shona person was involved in
Ngakho
Gukurahundi.
ngeza kusho ukuthi lonke lalelo ishona laliphakathi kweGukurahundi.
It is not true. It is simply not true.
Akusilo qiniso.
I know for a fact that a very close of my friend, of my father, a very close friend of my father,
Ubaba owayeseduze umngane owayeseduze kwababa wami.
who was the father of a friend of mine,
Owayenguyise womngane wami.
a childhood girlfriend in fact,
Intombi yami sisengabantwana.
very innocent. He was a Mazenda man, Shona man.
Wayengumasentame
He was beaten within an inch of his life
wachaya wasala kancane ukuthi impilo yakhe iphume
during Gukurahundi
ngesikhathi seGukurahundi
in Gweru.
eGweru.
He had to be lifted and brought to Bulawayo. That's how he moved. His business. He was a businessman. I'm giving this example so that people understand that it was not primarily an agenda against Ndebele. Nziramasanga, those who know Nziramasanga, was one of the first people to be detained in November 1980 together with my father and a few others. I think yourself. Well, anyway, I was young, but what am I trying to say? We have now been left with hatred and anger as a people. Every time Dynamos plays Highlanders at Baba Fields, Shani Shon. It was not like this. Let us be honest with ourselves. This thing has been politicized. Ethnicity has been politicized. And politics has been ethnicized. It's not even just Shona and Ndebele, by the way. The problem is even worse than we actually think. It's Karanga. It is Zezuru. We have become primitive people again. And this is what has been left on us. I have always argued that anyone who commits a crime must take personal responsibility for it. Don't collectivize your guilt. I have no reason to hate any Shona person myself. They have done nothing to me, except if they start to deny Gukurahundi. Then we have a problem. Because why are you denying something that you had nothing to do with?
Right.
So this is the challenge we now face as a people. We have to fight the hate. We have to know the real perpetrators. We must not misdirect our hate. Because if you misdirect your hate, it will consume you. A lot of terrible things happened in this place. And none of them, not even a little bit of them, have had a chance to be known. We have to get to a point as a people where we say there are lines no one can ever cross. And the reason why we're at Gukurahundi is because we have a history and a culture of allowing people to commit crimes and we forgive them without even them accounting for those crimes. Ian Smith started it because he knew that in trying to hold on to this country, that the small white Rhodesian minority, that Rhodesian front, he committed many crimes. He jailed people, he tortured people, he killed people. So he enacted a law that said anyone who commits a crime has an amnesty, is indemnified. It was called the indemnity something law, I think. Justice Nare will even guide me better. That law was inherited by Robert Mugabe when he came into power. And then, of course, in 1980, they gave an amnesty to everyone. Which was wrong. I'm not saying the amnesty was wrong, but people were supposed to have to account for what they did. I'm not even talking about Rhodesians, our own guerrillas raped and harassed and killed some of our own people.
Angikhulumi ngama Rhodesians kuphela kodwa ngikhuluma ngama guerrilla awethu rape abantu abulala abantu abethu thina abantu.
So they came here
babuya bona lapha
with a sense that it's okay to commit a crime because it can be forgiven. No one is allowed to talk about it. We just say, okay, no, let's not talk about that anymore.
Babuya sebela lokho engqondweni zabo ukuthi ungabulala ubuye lapha uyaxolelwa siyaqhubekela phambili.
In legal terms they call it impunity.
Ngasikanye ngomthetho ukuthi ukuthi into le
it means getting away with doing a crime and not being held accountable for it. Of course, you saw Tekere killed a white man straight afterwards. He was smiling. And then he was given an amnesty. And then Gukurahundi, another amnesty. So we have had amnesty after amnesty after amnesty. And victims have continued to hold the pain. So the Matebeleland question is never going away. I have said this many times. A lot of the direct witnesses to Gukurahundi have died. It is many years ago. But I tell you that Gukurahundi is alive more now than it has ever been. Because when you pass on a grievance from one generation to another, you create an even more difficult challenge of resolving. There are now children who lost their fathers and mothers. The chief spoke here earlier. How is it that 38 years after independence, there are children who can't get birth certificate? I mean, this is for me a shock. My brother Depros Muchena, who heads Amnesty International, spoke the other week. We were in a seminar together in Johannesburg. He talked about this issue. He was actually talking about a school here in Matopo where 60% of the children don't have birth certificate. They actually go all the way to Form 4 without birth certificate. I don't understand, but I also do understand it. Because what it means essentially is that the perpetrators are not willing and interested to own up to this problem, including on doing small little things. I'm going to close in 3 minutes. I was also asked to talk about whether it is possible to have healing led by the state. I see many people shaking their heads because they are saying, how can these people who came up with this plan, who did all this for 38 years, they've suppressed this discussion, how can they now come and say they can be part of a process? 38 years, I understand your skepticism. There are days I'm skeptical like that as well. There are days when I'm skeptical like that as well. But the truth of the matter is that there is no way of avoiding the involvement of the state in resolving the Gukurahundi issue. For many reasons. The first one is that they are the ones that committed it. So you cannot have a process without them, including a process that says you are the one who did it. The second is that the state has many obligations that it must carry.
Okwesibili ukuthi lona ilizwe lile mlando eminingi umele liyenze.
And you know, my lawyer friends that are here will understand this.
Ama-lawyer lapha azakuzwisisa lokho.
The state that is now, the Second Republic,
Ilizwe leli lesibili.
in legal nature is different from the First Republic.
Ngasikhangele zomthetho lahlukile lalelane lokuqala.
The state is different from the individuals in the state.
Ilizwe lihlukene
In legal terms.
abaselizweni ama-individuals.
I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Ngicabanga ukuthi angizwe ngizama ukukutsho.
So we have borrowed $16 billion as a country.
Siboleke 16
We are told
billion
that $5 billion just was borrowed in the past 2 months or something. But it's okay. Let us assume that there is a third republic.
Kube khona esithathu ilizwe lesithathu.
The third republic owns that debt. They must pay.
Laba bangenayo kwesithathu yibo kumele babhadale lesi sikweletu.
Even if none of the characters in the second republic are in the third republic.
Ngitsho lo yedwa phakathi kwalaba abakhokhelayo babekhona kubolekwa imali.
Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Kuyazwakala ngikutsho.
State responsibility demands that anything called the Zimbabwean state must own and must address Gukurahundi.
Konke okubizwa kuthiwa yi-state kumele kube yikho kulomlando, kumele yikho okwenza something eGukurahundi.
It is nonsensical ukuba khalalela.
Akuwenzi ingqondo, akwenzi ingqondo yekuba ubakhalalela.
They have an obligation.
Balomlando.
So they can also argue
Lawo bangatsho
that, oh, I was then in this republic, I was a different person.
Nga sabusa lo mina ngangingumuntu otshiyeneyo.
I accept the decisions I took in that republic.
Ngiyamukela izimiso engazenzayo ngisesela phayana.
I accept my responsibility for what I did then.
Ngiyawuthatha umlando walokho engakwenzayo ngisesela phayana.
But now I'm here
Kodwa athesi sengilapha
as president of the second republic.
njengomongameli wesibili elizweni.
I do not understand why those people did those things. Those things were bad things.
Izinto lezo sasizimbi lezo.
And now that I'm where I am,
njengoba sengikhona kathesi
I want to also wash my hands from those things. Those were very bad things. I know I was there, but I want to accept responsibility for being there. But now this is what I'm going to do in this particular.
izandla zami ngiyazigeza, but ngenxa yokuthi ngangikhona khona phana ngizathatha umlando wenze
It's a complicated thing.
unxibene lokho kuyinto.
And it's complicated because the conditions for justice are never optimal.
Kunxibene ngoba nxa ukhangela izimiso ze-justice azikho optimal.
It's never perfect. The conditions for justice are never perfect.
Azikho perfect ama conditions.
That is why many governments, sometimes like the South Africans, they decided to have a truth commission.
Yikho ke amazwe amaningi njenge South Africa ya decide ukuthi be le truth commission.
They had their own process. It worked for some, it didn't work for others.
Yasebenza kwabanye yangasebenzi kwabanye.
But my general point is that the state has a responsibility.
Umcijo wami jikelele ukuthi sona istate isesilomlando.
And we must force it to take responsibility.
Kumele sibaphoqelele ukuthi bathathe lo mlando.
We can't say, yiba basibulalayo, they will never do anything. We have to force them.
Njengoba kuyiba basibulalayo ikho into abangayenza kumele sibafuqe bakwenze.
So that's the bigger point.
Yiwo umcijo wami engathi umkhulu.
We are on the verge of losing an opportunity.
Sesingaphose silahlekelwe lithuba.
We are on the verge of losing a very, very great opportunity.
Sokusele kancane ukuthi silahlekelwe lithuba elikhulu.
Some may not agree with what I'm going to say.
Mhlawumbe abanye bele ngeke bavumelana nalokho enza kutsho.
3, 4, maybe 5 years ago, this would not have happened.
3 or 4 years yadlula lokho bekungeke kwenzakala.
Something is happening in the country.
Ikhona into eyenzakala elizweni.
There is something different about the current leadership of the country.
Ikhona into eyahlukileyo ngobukhokheli bethu esilabo khathesi.
There's a lot that is the same, of course. Because the leadership was also part of the leadership before. But there is something different. We may not want to accept it, or we may not all agree. It is willing to take some risks. Believing that it can manage those risks. So there's a willingness to say, no, you can talk, but be careful how much you are talking. You can demonstrate, but if you demonstrate too much, be careful what we will do. So there's an opportunity. And for a perpetrator, let me say this very importantly. For a perpetrator, perpetrators are also afraid. They are afraid of you, the victims. Never ever forget this. So the fear you have for perpetrators is the same fear they have for you. You know, it's like when someone borrows money from you. They avoid you, huh? But when you say, no, come. Don't worry about the money. Let's talk. We want to talk about something else. What am I trying to say? It is in our collective interest. It's the hardest thing a victim can ever do. Is to facilitate a process for a perpetrator to come forward. Because as a victim, you want nothing to do with your perpetrator. Because he has done this, she or he has done this, you don't want anything to do with them. I'm not going to say what must happen, but that's just a point I want to leave. How do we take advantage of this opportunity? What more could the government do? There is a lot. I believe there is a lot that the government can do. I also believe that there is a lot that it has done given where we are coming from. I never ever imagined that there would be a National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. I have my criticism of the commission. I love my sister choice and I love the justice, but I have my criticism of it. But let me tell you something that I'm very proud of. The fact that the NPRC is here with us today. It's telling me that some of my initial views about it are totally wrong. The chief said that there must be many spaces to talk about Gukurahundi. And one of the things I've watched and seen the commission do in the past several months is that instead of the typical command commissions in Zimbabwe, which say this is the commission, you come to us, and when we come to you, you come where we are. I've noticed something really important that has changed. The commissioners are going wherever there is conversations. That is a good thing. It's a good thing. Because they are saying that the conversation is not their own. And they are also refusing. I've been watching. There are instances where the commission is asserting its independence. There are times when the commission will say, we are going to this thing. In spite of knowing that the authorities might not be too happy that they are there. And those are positive developments. I always like to start with positive things before I even talk about other things. All the commissioners that were appointed are really upstanding, well-respected people. I have a great deal of respect for most of them. I have a problem with how it was done, the appointment. I do think that the appointment has eaten into the credibility of the commissioners. I'm not saying it cannot be fixed. Because if you are credible, you can win your credibility, whichever way. The commission was appointed by former president. And he never intended it to succeed. He gave it no money. He gave it no act. He gave it nothing. Because for him, Gukurahundi was past. A moment of madness, something that he was doing it because the MDC and others pushed for a commission in the constitution. So you want a commission here, you have it. There is your commission. That's what he did. It didn't even give it a chair. The only time it got a chair was when the new president came in. I have recommended that because this is Mugabe's commission. I know they don't agree, some of them. It's independent, but I've recommended that the president might want to revisit the commission. Not the entire commission, of course. Because I've already said that there are a lot of really respectable, upstanding people in that commission. But ownership, that was mentioned by Reverend Mott. Oh, yes, ownership. The president might want to look at the composition of the commission to try to bring in a few new commissioners. It's a possibility. It's just my own thinking. Responding to what he is hearing and seeing happening in the country ever since the commission started working. Because the truth of the matter is that there are responses and reactions to the commission already. The public is saying things about it. It's saying, so he could. One thing I would do if I was the president, I would listen carefully to what some of the feedback that is being given, and I would act on it. For example, I would make sure that because Gukurahundi is one of the most critical issues that the commission has to deal with, I would make sure that it has fairly respectable people from the region. I'm not saying Justice Nare is not respectable. No. He is. He is the chair. But the composition can be revisited. It's a fact. There are very respectable clergymen, religious leaders, community leaders who by their simple presence in the commission might bring together communities as well. And they might enhance the trust and confidence in the commission. And we're not even saying dismiss the commission and appoint a new one. We are saying just listen carefully to what people are saying about it. So that is one. For me. The second is that the commission needs money. You are not going to address the question of not just Gukurahundi, Mrambatswina, and all the wrongs that have happened with a commission that is not resourced. If you are serious about this, put your money where your mouth is. We know the money is there somewhere. Because we know during elections there are cars. I don't even think the commission has cars now. Maybe they don't even have cars. I didn't see any car written commission outside when I arrived. So I'm sure they got leaves from other people. And these are people who are supposed to lead us in a process of healing. They are not. Catching combis and taxis. It's not going to work. So the commission needs to be given money. And these are some of the demands we can make as the people. We can say we want to see that we are serious. We want an office of the commission in every province. We want to be able to go there ourselves and give our testimony in that office.
Right.
Not to wait for Justice Nare. Maybe he can get on Air Zimbabwe if Air Zimbabwe is working. And then he has to come.
I understand for Justice Nare.
So I'm not even talking about political things. I'm talking about just some really practical things that can demonstrate that the government is really serious about this commission. Something else that the commission can do, because the commission is independent. Because people are saying you need a separate Gukurahundi process. I have at times thought that way. But there's nothing to stop the commission from having within itself a specific Gukurahundi related committee. And to prioritize Gukurahundi in its way. That is a possibility. Why I'm saying this, it's not an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Because I said earlier, the conditions for justice are never perfect. And the commission itself could even solicit external support for this particular body of work on Gukurahundi. There are many people out there. We even can offer that support, some of us. But by so doing, the commission will be showing that it is listening and hearing what people are saying. Because to come to Matebeleland and say, no, let's start with 1963, about the crimes that happened during the war, people say, come on, you know what? It's better just go. Just go, it's okay. We don't want to go. Start with what is hurting people the most. And it is possible to do this. We know that the commission cares because they are here. So there are opportunities there. I think I must stop.
3 minutes.
I've stood up to say how happy I am to listen for the first time to an individual whose analysis coincides 100% with mine. For the first time. I'll mention very quickly. One is acceptance that we recognize things that are different now. There is no way I would have agreed for this place to be a venue for this kind of thing before this new order. Never. He mentioned it and his son. Secondly, there is no way I would have written the 2 books that I presented to the church. I would sell him the 2 books before he Right, and finally, the analysis which is critical. It's not about, the issue about Gukurahundi was never about ethnicity. That's very important to understand. Perhaps he didn't tell you why. The most critical thing was the ethnicization of the liberation movement or nationalist movement, happening for the first time in 1963. That split was ethnic. The people who got out of ZAPU were Maniga and Karanga. That's a fact. Then came 1971. Those who are familiar with our history, I also have another book on the March 11 movement. The people who got out, that was Chikerema. The Zezuru had remained in ZAPU following 1963 split. That's a fact. Through Chikerema, George Bozonyadoro, Parenyato and others. Until 1971, and that split took place in Zambia. Chikerema went, Bozonyandoro together, and then you had some people who left but then returned. The men in Mashonaland East, or I forget his name, Tiniri. They came back, or Chirinda came back, but they had left. So that was the ethnicization, or what I termed the Ndebelization of ZAPU. The thing that had to be crushed was ZAPU and not the Ndebele. But how would you differentiate between the Ndebele and ZAPU? That's what had remained. Mugabe was preoccupied with wanting one thing, the undisputed leader with a one-party state. That's what he wanted. And we should be clear about that one. And so they wanted, as I said, the expression I used was, totally dismantle the ZAPU political infrastructure. And they did it. But how do you destroy ZAPU without destroying Amandebele? Because those are the people that remained in that part. So let's be clear about this one. So I'm very, very happy for Amandebele.